President Cyril Ramaphosa says the ANC's upcoming conference will renew the party even as he faces criticism over his handling of the Phala Phala farm robbery. Ramaphosa telling ANC members to prepare as the party is preparing its branches to go to conference next month. Now, this is for the work they've been doing during the term of office. The president saying that he himself faces calls to step aside at the party's NEC meeting, but it's emerged, well, rather he has emerged unscathed after revealing details of the robbery at his farm to the party's leadership. Govind Whittles sets the stage now for the conversation we're about to have. Let's take a listen.
President Cyril Ramaphosa seemed to have survived a grueling meeting as he approached the podium to deliver the ANC NEC's closing address. He says the party's branches are now ready to recommit to renewal, something that's at the core of his campaign.
This national conference will be a moment of great significance for the African National Congress and our country. It will demonstrate the ANC's internal democratic processes at work and affirm the commitment of ANC members to renewal, to unity and to rebuilding our organization.
One of the tenets of renewal is the ANC's Election Commission's vetting system.
Those that are listed or have gone through to the Integrity Commission, and the Commission says they recommend step aside, they will also not be eligible for standing as candidates for the NEC positions. Those that are facing disciplinary actions and are actually suspended pending a disciplinary sitting, they are not going to be allowed to participate. And those that have been found guilty for serious misconduct in the ANC are also not going to be allowed.
Ramaphosa told NEC members that in a month's time, the branches will judge them all on how they've led the party.
This report will be greatly enriched by the discussions that we have had here. And our report will reflect that while this NEC has had to confront serious challenges, we can point to several achievements and progress in a number of areas. At the same time, we will need to acknowledge our shortcomings and our failings as the National Executive Committee, as we also point out some of the areas where we've been able to make progress.
He also wants the political and organizational reports adopted here to reflect on the party honestly.
As this NEC, we are now at the final close of our term. Our task now is to ensure that we have a successful 55th National Conference that takes forward the National Democratic Revolution.
The ANC president may have disappointed expectations that he would address the robbery at his farm, but he appears to have consolidated enough support to survive attempts to oust him and appears more confident in his campaign. For Newzroom Afrika on Channel 405, I'm Govind Whittles in Johannesburg.
Well, let's get reaction now on this story and, importantly, the state of leadership in the ANC. We're joined by Dr Pali Lehohla, Director of the Economic Modelling Academy. Doc, good morning to you and thank you very much for your time. Can we start with Brand ANC? Good morning, sir. Let's start with Brand ANC. As the president there, you were listening in to what he was saying, that this party, again, is trying to renew itself. What would you say is the state of Brand ANC right now?
Let me step back to Polokwane in 2007, where the former president Thabo Mbeki asked the question repeatedly, how will we honor them, those who paid the ultimate price during the centenary celebrations, which would have been 2012? Those gathered there remain silent on this question, unfortunately. And we have seen how we have honored them. And since 2009, 2010, the party has been trying to renew itself. It's now been a decade trying to renew the party without seeing any results around that renewal. Neither has unity been possible. What has happened is the country has been sacrificed on the unity project by all indicators, the economic, social, education and everything. So one really wonders whether the unity project is succeeding or is costing the country what it costs. And central to this is the question, how will we honor them, those who paid the ultimate price? If the Zondo Commission is what is the honor, then we know that the country is facing very, very serious problems going forward.
Yeah. Let's touch on the leadership challenges, therefore. The country, as it observed this weekend's meeting, the people that are contesting for positions, including the man at the helm of the party, they are mired in controversy over allegations of wrongdoing. What does South Africa take away from this? How do you gain the trust and confidence of citizens if your party is in this situation?
Well, in the heat of the moment and trying to assess in the heat of the moment, we may get things wrong and misinterpret. I suppose we need to step back a bit. In this regard, we need to look at Mokweng's judgment on Nkandla, where he said the person of the president is a constitutional being, when he was judging Msholozi. Now, I think on the case of Phala Phala, the question is, does this accord with a constitutional being? And I think that's the test on which we should assess any aspiring leader or the leader who is in place. If they pass muster on that, then I think they will execute Zondo's recommendations. But if they fail to pass muster, then there is no point appointing them because they will compromise us on executing what the recommendations Zondo is putting before us. Well, so looking at Phala Phala issue, it really has very worrying signals, and former President Mtlante has expressed himself on this. Former President Mbeki has expressed himself on this. So has President Zuma expressed himself on this. There are many things that really remain, need answers, particularly on the question of the heightened moral obligation to a person of the president as a constitutional being. And we have to take comfort in Mokweng's judgment and use that as a scale.
Well, Professor, you leave me no choice but to ask then a direct question about if the president is indeed a constitutional being, as you say, has he handled himself in a manner befitting of a man who holds such an office, in particular, the oath he took? What should he be doing right now?
Let me step back and go back to Madiba. When Louis Late took him on a case of rugby, Madiba went and appeared before court. And that, I think, marked being a constitutional being, not being above the law, being ordinary, but at the same time, mindful of being a constitutional being. That conduct of leadership, not only in the case of law, but in the case of normal management of affairs, suggests we need a person of high moral standing that cannot even be suspected of doing anything like that. Let me tell you one thing. When I was statistician general, I was once accused of stealing money and buying houses. I realized, while that was not true, I should have been more transparent. Even though I submitted my reports to the Minister of Finance saying this is what I bought, you need to be a lot more transparent with your colleagues around what it is that you do. That is what demanded of leadership. You don't need to be in a position where you are suspected. And that is what is required.
Again, I'm going to press you on this, Dr. Lehohla. The president, let me start with former President Motlanthe. He says, as president, you should be unimpeachable. There is a report that will be handed over to Parliament tomorrow from a parliamentary panel. We don't know what it's going to say. There are multiple investigations on the other end that are ongoing. Some of the political pundits have said he may escape in other areas, but there will be possibly one or two that stick. He may not necessarily be charged, Dr. Lehohla. He may not be charged, as the ANC step-aside rule requires that if you are charged criminally, then you step aside. If he's not charged, but one of these sticks, what should be the obligation on President Cyril Ramaphosa?
Well, we go back to Mokweng, that is a constitutional being, and a constitutional being must stand the test of time for cleanliness, this is something that must be found clean on all counts. Not that we are not fallible, all of us are fallible, but once you are given the status of constitutional being, you cannot be a constitutional being and still expect respect if you are found wanting. For instance, $580,000 is way above the $10,000 that the Reserve Bank requires you to declare when you have it in your possession. So 580,000, whether it was declared, we do not know. It doesn't look like it was declared because everybody was caught by surprise, so was SARS. Those are really serious implications for a constitutional being.
Then there is a view, Dr. Lehohla, that if indeed President Cyril Ramaphosa does get off the seat, he's either impeached or he has to step aside. There's a view that the country will not only be plunged into a political crisis, but it'll be a constitutional crisis. What do you foresee a solution being to get ourselves out of that?
I think South Africa has many constitutional beings. We had Mandela. We should be having many of those caliber in the country that should actually pursue what the President Ramaphosa started by running the Zondo Commission. This really can be taken up by anybody, but that person must fit the constitutional being, because if they don't, they're going to compromise us on Zondo. By the way, if we don't deal with the Zondo Commission recommendations, this country is going to face very, very serious problems. And if you bring in somebody compromised on constitutional being, then the Zondo Commission is going to be compromised, because there will be a lot of dealing and wheeling. So there shouldn't be a compromise on this issue.
Final question to you, sir. I'm completely out of time. The markets are watching developments here. The understanding is that ratings agencies may give an assessment this coming Friday. The markets internationally are watching that conference as to what the likely outcomes are going to be. You are a person who's au fait with economics. Where are we in terms of being a stable democracy with these problems of political instability?
Political instability certainly creates serious limitations to giving South Africa the stature it had always enjoyed in the first few years of its administration, the first and the second and third administrations. Beyond that point, we have been very, very unstable. The economy has not been performing. The speech by the president gives very little hope that we'll perform better. I think it's too much of inputs that we will go for. I mean, what we have to do and what we have to elevate in the president's speech and any other authority speech is what the outcomes will be. We should be able to say unemployment will be reduced to 14% or 10%. And then we can talk about the means of doing so. At the moment, we are still talking about inputs into the system and without any impact, against a declared impact by the National Treasury of a higher unemployment rate in 2024, 2026, and the lower growth of 1.6% in 2026, 4 years away from achieving NDP. If we don't address those things, confront them and say, against what Treasury has told us, this is what we will achieve, and we'll achieve it by this means, which are the inputs. At the moment, the inputs are hardly going to move that needle, and everybody is lamenting and regretting that this is the situation we will be in. I think South Africa needs better, and it can afford better, because policies matter.
Dr. Pali Lehohla, let me thank you very much for your time, Director of the Economic Modeling Academy.